Hello, English 1060. Welcome to Module 3's lecture. We are making our way through the semester. You are now more than 30% done, and we're heading into what I think is the most important part of this course, which is learning how to do the research, right? This is a skill set that's going to help you throughout your college career, especially if you have never been introduced to using academic databases. Welcome to it. This particular lecture might even feel a little bit overwhelming because I'm going to be setting you up and explaining things, but it's also going to be your job to make sure you go through the library instructional videos of how to use databases in our system called Primo, and making sure you read the textbook information to also help you understand the kinds of source types available to you. So you have to do the synthesis work to take this lecture and those things and put them together to best serve you. But I'm going to do my best to guide you through the assignment portion here in this lecture and make sure I point out a couple of important resources for you so you feel confident heading into academic research. So let me move my face over a little bit. Here's what we're going to do in this particular lecture, okay? I want to talk about this next step in our research process and why we do it, okay? Because I like to prove to you that it's worth your time and not just busy work. I want to give you the assignment prompt, what you actually have to do for this next step, which is the annotated bibliography. I will go over the template that I ask you to use. I'm a big template person. It helps us write better and forces us to think critically. I want to show you a couple student samples of past annotated bibliographies so you see what they're supposed to look like, and so I can point out a couple of oh no, please don't do this, okay? And then I'll make sure you know how to use Purdue OWL to look up how to do citations for the annotated bibliography, which you'll also end up using in your final essay. And then I'll make sure you know what to do for Module 4 assignments at this point. I'm hoping that you've already read the chapter, you've taken the reading quiz, and now you're here. Okay, that's my hope. That's my at least pedagogical perspective of what order you should do things in. But now you're here with me, so let's go. All right, so this next part of the research project. At this point, I'm hoping you have turned in your research proposal and that I'm working on giving you feedback on that so you feel confident, you know at least your initial research question, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to answer, and you have a little bit of working knowledge. And now we're headed toward focused knowledge, as your textbook calls it. So we're writing an annotated bibliography, which is a fancy way of saying a citation and a summary, okay, of the text that you're finding. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But some of you have probably written these or seen these or heard these talked about. But I just want to go ahead and call your attention to the fact of why we even do them, okay? And I definitely simplify them compared to some of my other colleagues that I know that kind of make them a little bit more lengthy in terms of commentary, but I try to keep it really simple so that we can really get to the heart of it. An annotated bibliography forces you to read your sources carefully and very specifically with a rhetorical perspective in mind. And again, if I'm using the word rhetoric and you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, make sure you go back and watch that intro to rhetoric video that I sent out a little while ago. I'll make sure that link is included somewhere in this module in case you missed it. But it forces us to read more carefully. It forces us to read critically rather than just cherry picking information. And I'll be the first one to admit that in undergrad, when I was doing research, I would literally find an article and just pick the best quotable quote from it and then move forward. But you're missing out on so much when you do that. So this is forcing us not to just cherry pick information. We're reading critically. We're understanding the context. It helps us to see what's already been written about the subject, especially now if you've done a little bit of Googling and you understand a little bit about the social justice issue that's going on in your country. This will help us see the extent to which academics are already talking about it. Also, just so you know, this is a genre in itself that's published often. Okay, these things are collected. That might be something you even run into when you're doing your research, seeing scholarly and extensive annotated bibliographies published so that other scholars can have quicker access to that kind of published information. So that's my pitch to you of why we do this. Okay. All right. Now, here's your assignment, the annotated bibliography. Okay. I'm going to pop out of my slides and pull up the assignment sheet that you're going to have, and this will be linked in this lecture section as well. All right. Here we go. Again, big lecture, lots of information. Hang in there with me. Here is your assignment, the annotated bibliography. I'm already looking at the bottom here. It's worth 150 points, which is 15% of your grade. It is the most technical of any assignment that you will do for me. So in terms of focusing on syntax, which is sentence structure, punctuation, having everything perfected, this is the assignment for that. You know, I always feel like I'm pretty good with wiggle room in terms of if you're communicating something well, even if it's not perfectly written, you know, but I get the idea, then I can follow you. But this is not that assignment. This is technical writing. This is going to be challenging like if you're someone that just kind of quickly does assignments to turn them in, which I totally understand. This you really can't do effectively. It's not a challenge. Don't take that as a challenge. You will be very sad if you don't take your time through this assignment, which, you know, to prove to you, if you look at the important dates on this prompt on the side here, you see that we're doing practice. We're doing a practice annotation. I'll show you what that looks like momentarily with an article that you've already read. How exciting. You'll practice an annotation for your own research. You'll workshop the 3 additional entries, and then you'll turn in the final 7 that are due, okay? We're running this part of the course from now, which I'm recording this on the 5th of March. But the annotated bibliography, the full thing is due April 6th. So you've got a full month to work on this and use it, okay? But here are the particulars, okay? I'm going through this, particulars, and maybe this will make more sense to you looking at a student sample, which I'll do momentarily, but I'll walk through this and show you the sample. You need to find 7 sources that explore or help demonstrate a range of angles, frameworks, and positions based on your topic published within the last 10 years, okay? That's kind of the range of like what's still relevant. So check those publication dates. Make sure the ones that you do for this particular assignment, because you can use others. You're not married to these sources. You can definitely use other sources in your actual essay. But for this, published within the last 10 years, all right, speaking to your question in some way. So it doesn't have to directly answer it. You get to do that synthesis work, okay? So you're looking for sources that could help you understand a range of information speaking to the question that you've created. Now, of these 7, 2 of the 7 have to be academic articles, okay, from the databases, which you're learning about with the library and in other parts of your study for this module. 2 of them must be peer-reviewed academic articles. Okay, that's the first thing. So of the 7, 2 need to be academic. The remaining 5, 1 should be a credible newspaper or magazine. Of course, that can be online. And I ask you to at least have one of those so you can see that there's kind of cultural conversation around your topic and your interest. So seeing kind of a more generalized audience. What am I trying to say? Oops. A more generalized audience, like for a particular source, being able to intake that information. Okay, so 2 academic, 1 magazine, or newspaper. The remaining 4 are your choice. I do want to encourage you to look at doing interviews or videos or even surveys, things like that you read about in the textbook, but I want to ask that only 2 of those remaining 4 are what we call those non-traditional or multimodal sources, but you can do 2 of those. So if you do 2 videos or interviews or something, the other 2 left could be academic articles, could be newspaper magazine articles, could be government documents. Review that list of that beautiful upside down triangle in your textbook that gives you those source types. But that's what you need to do for me for this project in terms of what kind of sources that you find. Then you're going to use this annotation template to write a rhetorical précis or summary. It's just a fancy way of saying it, which I'll show you next. But that's what you're doing. You're summarizing those 7, and then you're also creating an annotation, you're creating a citation. I know I'll mix those words up, but citation and an annotation for each source. So that's explained here. Okay. The citation that you create should be in MLA format. That's what we're using for this course. And you will, I know you have information in the Curious Researcher of how to put those together. But also, I just end up using Purdue OWL because it's the most accurate. I don't know, I trust it because it keeps up with any changes in MLA. But you will need to construct those on your own and not use the citation builder machine because those aren't always accurate and it makes me nervous. Okay. So anyway, that's what you're doing. Basically, you're creating a citation and an annotation for each of your 7 sources that you find on your inquiry question. Okay. Of course, I have some notes here on reminding you that this is super technical. Like, spend time with it. Like, I've devoted like a full month of our course to focusing on this because I think it's the most important part. All right, finding the content that you're going to use to synthesize and answer that great question that I'm sure if you haven't come up with by now, then you will by tomorrow, right? Because again, recording this on Friday the 5th, so I'm excited to read those proposals. Okay, so now that you know kind of the general thing, you're like, well, what are you even talking about with this annotation template? I'm going to show you. So what I would like to tell you is that this annotation template is called a rhetorical précis. I'll use those kind of interchangeably, and it's a little bit different. Like if you've done an annotated bibliography before, maybe you've just been asked to like summarize and then say why it's credible or something, or write a summary. And this is a genre of summary, okay? A rhetorical précis or an annotation, this template. But I love this and I love working with it because it forces you to think about the rhetorical situation of your sources, okay? So I want to go ahead and pull up what this looks like in the end, because even though this is like a Mad Lib to start, what it's going to end up looking like is this here on the page. You've got citation, annotation, and this is only that template. I don't want anything extra at all. I just want you to do the template for each of your sources, okay? So this is a full sample annotated bibliography that you'll have access to, just showing you what it looks like as a full document. This is the final project, and that's what it's going to look like, okay? But in terms of creating this, I want to show you that you really can't look at it as a Mad Lib. So I have some students respond that they love it, and some find it really infuriating. But then in the end, they understand that it's made them write more, like stronger, right? Because it is forcing you to think about certain concepts in an article in a very tight syntactical way, all right? So I'm going to walk through this with you right now. So take a deep breath or pause the video if you need to. I'm going to walk through what I'm asking you to find and construct from each of your articles, okay, or sources. Here we go. The first sentence here asks for author's credentials, meaning particularly academically, where do they work and like what's their title, okay? So if I had written an article and you were citing for me, you would say lecturer of English at UNC Pembroke, right? And that's what you can do for any of your authors, or really their highest degree and where they work, what's their title, where they work. And that'll be the case even for non-academic sources. But you've got to set up, like, why should we believe them, right? What gives them the right to even write this? Put that first, comma, author's first and last name, okay? And if you have more than one, you will be doing credential, author, comma, and, right? So set it up together, but you'll list their first and last name. Then you'll say in their, his or her, if you know the pronouns, choose them. And if not, just use their, or if it's multiple, use their. Then the genre. So if it's an article, call it an article. Book, chapter, video, essay, something. Identify the genre of the particular source you're using. Comma. And then the title of the text, punctuated appropriately. Normally an article will always be in quotations. The only things that are in italics are things that are kind of big holders. So books, full books, movie titles, things like that. But most of the time you'll probably have something in quotations. And then you'll set up the main argument. So you'll say argues or asserts or claims or defends that. You must use the word that after your verb because it forces you to set up a complete sentence, okay, independent sentence after that word. You'll see it when you look at examples, particularly because the problem, and some of the problems even that I've seen in looking at the past discussion, is that people will say the main argument is, talking about this subject. And it's like, well, that's not an argument, right? So you have to be specific about the particular claim that they're making that could be disputed, right? Or whatever they're discussing. But you have to set it up with the word that, so you're forced to write a complete independent clause afterwards. But that central argument, that thesis of the text, you're welcome to quote it, all right? Like if you find it somewhere directly in the article, you are welcome to quote it there, but just be careful about your quotation mechanics. But if you can put it in your own words, that's even better. But that's what you'll do for that first sentence. So you've got authors, their credentials, the text, like the context, and the main argument in the first sentence. The second sentence is really the only sentence that you have agency in changing. This sentence gives you 3 spaces here, 3 Mad Lib spaces, to talk about how an author or authors support that main claim, okay? And you really have to focus in on not trying to just say everything that's in the article or the source. You have to think, how are they supporting their particular argument, okay? Their main argument. What are they doing to prove to us, the reader, that argument is valid, okay? So you might have 1 space. You might have all 3 spaces. You might have 5 spaces. Who knows? It's just going to depend. So you can adjust that sentence. So if there aren't 3 things, don't make them up, okay? You can adjust that. So it'll be, they support their claim by first, then, and finally. Or you can just say they support their claim by 1 thing, okay? That's the second sentence, how they support that main argument, how they support it. The third sentence is all about their purpose and what they're trying to accomplish, okay? So you say author's last name or their purpose, whatever kind of makes sense to you. Like if there are many authors, maybe you just put their purpose. But if not, then just put the author's last name if there's 1. So their purpose is to what? Those core purpose words, persuade, inform, entertain, right? So you can start there and think about like what's their purpose? Why did they write this, right? Why did they write this? And then in order to, and this is the part that tricks people up a lot, in order to accomplish what? What are they literally trying to get their audience to do with this information? Now, to be a cynic, a lot of the time in academic articles, what they're trying to accomplish, honestly, is to promote more research, because publish or perish in academia, right? So at a very base level, they're probably just adding to the conversation, even though we might think like, oh, they're trying to encourage us to go out there and do something. But again, when we're thinking about audience, and this will kind of speak to this next part of the template, the only people that have access to academic articles are academic audiences, meaning people who can either pay for these expensive articles or who have work or study in universities that pay for it. Because, sorry, an aside, each one of these academic articles that you access and read or even kind of look at in normal world outside of the halls of academia, it's $30 a pop to even read the article, okay? So get your money's worth in these databases while you're a student here. So what are they trying to accomplish? Like, you got to think, like, do they literally want the audience to do something? Literally? Or are they adding to the conversation? Or are they trying to make some kind of political change or, scare us out of complacency? Like, what are they trying to do, right? That's that third part, purpose. The fourth has to do with tone and intended audience. So they adopt a blank tone. You can choose this. If you're doing an academic article, it will probably be objective or candid, right? Candid meaning clear, formal even. I don't like, if you're reading an academic article and you find it to be sarcastic, it probably isn't an academic article, right? So you get to choose that tone word. What kind of tone do you get from it? And then 4, intended audience. Now, the trick here is an academic article, just put academic audience. There's your answer, because that's going to include people like you, people like me, other researchers, because that's who has access, right? That's who has access, generally, academic audience. And it's also the people that have been trained or are being trained to be able to read it, however unfortunate that is. But an academic audience is what you'll put for academic articles and other scholarly sources. But then for, magazine articles, newspaper articles, you've got to think about who has access and who's reading it. Not who it's for, not who the author maybe wants to read it, but who is literally going to see it, okay? I want to think about examples without just giving you all the answers, because I want you to be able to think about it. But even thinking about the New York Times, like, you got to think, like, who even reads that? Who reads it? Do you read it? Do I read it? Yes. But I don't know, it's kind of like, you've got to think about who literally reads it. And honestly, if you want, you could even Google, like, audience for whatever source. But one thing you cannot do here is put general audience, because honestly, there's no such thing as a general audience. My example for that, to prove that to you, is movies rated G. Who are they for? They're for children, right? You wouldn't necessarily take a date to a G-rated movie, because who else would be around you? I don't know. That's a good way to think about it. General audience to me is going to be like, oh, it's for children. Okay. I didn't know 4-year-olds could read yet, So make sure you really think about what audience could have access to the particular source that you are annotating. Finally, that last sentence, and this is what you'll do for your own annotated bibliography. You will not need to do this for any practice work that we do, because this is about drawing attention to why a particular piece is significant. So I want you to think about how the article, or whatever the genre is significant to your research and your research question. And please don't just write, it's significant to my research because it answers my question. I want to see that you know what specifically you might use it for in an essay. Like, what is it giving you that other sources aren't? and set that up for you, for me. That would be really good. Okay, that was a quick run through of the annotation template. I hope you feel a little bit overwhelmed, but not so overwhelmed. And if you've taken 1050 with me, then this is just a review because we worked with it with summary. Okay, that's what I have to say about that. Deep breath for us all. So we've done that. I've kind of shown you, or I've pulled it up at least, some samples, and you have access to a couple. Like you have access to one, like a draft that I put comments on. So please don't look at these and think these are absolutely 100% perfect, because they're not. Even the one that looks really solid has a couple of things that need to be adjusted, and we can talk about that as we move forward too. Can point those things out. But I do want to take a minute, and I haven't done this before, but I want to show you sometimes what happens, particularly when students are running out of time, and I know you've got a lot of stuff going on in other courses, and so you end up saving this until the very last minute and turning something in that kind of looks like the annotated bib, but really isn't. And it's upsetting to me because it's like there's nothing I can do other than to say, like, this isn't the assignment, and I was looking for really technical writing. So here's an example of what someone turned in, and, I gave them like a little bit of credit, but it's just not up to par of where it needs to be. So the formatting's all off. Like, this isn't really a citation. It's messy. There's a lot of missing pieces within the annotation. The font's all different and strange. And you can look through it too, of where it's just kind of like they stuck things together in a document to turn it in and hoped that it would get them credit, but it's not technical writing. So this is an example of what you shouldn't do because it's a mess, right? And again, I try to be lenient in some senses, but this is the one assignment that you really need to focus in on perfecting as much as you can perfect, okay? Because this is perfectible. Writing in general isn't, but this is something where you could score the full amount of points on because, it's technical writing. You could do it. You could do it. So make sure to spend some time with those student samples. Okay. Now I want to make sure you know about Purdue OWL. Hoping that you do, because this is Comp 2, so I'm hoping that in your Comp 1 or equivalent, you've spent some time knowing that you have access to Purdue OWL, okay? When you open this link that you'll have access to, you end up here. Works cited page, basic formatting. So this is where you'll go to figure out citations. I want to go ahead and warn you. Don't use this. Please don't use this. It's just messy, and you end up having to do more work, and you get confused, okay? So what you need to do, I'll just go ahead and take us here to electronic sources to show you what you'll do for academic citations. But please don't use the citation builder, okay? Or if you do, you really got to check it against the formatting here. Okay, that's why I'm like, just skip that step and just go here. So I'm going down to an article from an online database, because this is the citation style that you're going to use when you find articles from an online database, right? Which you're going to learn about in those library videos. But here we go. This is what you'll use. You'll look at this. So here you have the author's last name, comma, first name, period. Okay, pay attention to all of these little details. And if you're someone that has trouble kind of translating online stuff, like digital things into your brain, sometimes I just have to print this stuff out, like copy and paste it onto a Word document and then be able to look at it. But look at these things, okay? Period. Then you have the title in quotations, the period within the quotes. You have the title of the journal in italics, comma, the volume, the number or issue, okay, the year, the pages, the database title, the DOI number, and you'll format it this way of DOI colon, and then all of that weird information there, because that's where we find like a stable link. And that's something that students often forget to do, is kind of adjust the DOI formatting. And then your access date. When did you find it? Saying it like that makes it really simple, but I know it's going to take a minute, especially if you're not used to this and where to find that information. So part of your assignment for discussion is to create a citation for that article that you worked with in the last module. You'll also have access to screenshots of where I found it, so you can be able to pull that information into that kind of formatting. So I'll give you access to this of where I found the article, and then I pulled it off of this database. So you'll see that there. So you have all the pieces and parts in one place or another. And I want to see if you can make it, okay? I want to see if we can get it right with one attempt there for practice. Okay. So finally, my final words to you as we head into this exciting start to research is that for discussion during this module, you're going to practice using that template with the article that you read and started to break down for module 2. Okay, so I'm not giving you new reading, just work with the same kind of difficult article and create a citation for it. So I want to see how you do that, and I want to see what parts of the template are most difficult for you, and we'll get to kind of work through some of those issues, and I'll make sure to post my version of the template for this article after everyone else has attempted it, so you can see how I'd go about it. But then by March 20th, I want you to turn into me one perfected annotation with a citation for your own research. It can be any source type, but I really do want to encourage you to try an academic one so that I can see that you know how to do that, because I think those are the most difficult. But that's what we're doing. We're getting a jump start on research, so we're going to practice with the template, practice that critical reading and using the rhetorical précis. But then we're going ahead and jumping into our own research. Okay. I hope this is helpful. Please let me know if you have questions or what gaps I can fill in after you've looked at the library videos, student samples, prompts, all the other resources that you have. But of course, I'm around to be able to add any missing pieces. And even if I need to make a follow-up lecture, happy to do it. So give me that feedback and we'll get through this together. Okay, get started. Thank you.